everyone, this is Marcelli. I've been asked in the comments a few times to go over my add-ons and my UI, so I wanted to make this video to explain the add-ons that I have and why I chose those add-ons. I'm not going to go super in-depth in terms of each specific add-on, but if there are additional questions, feel free to leave those questions in the comments below, and I'll get back to you. In the future, I may plan on doing additional videos on specific add-ons with a more in-depth guide, but for now I just wanted to show you an overall view of what add-ons I have and why I chose them. If you do enjoy these kinds of videos, please like and subscribe, it helps me out. So before I talk about the first add-on, I want to quickly go over the party frame positioning. So for me, I have my party frames going vertical on the left-hand side of my character. This is so that while I'm healing people, I can always kind of glance over and see myself to see if I'm standing in anything, or if I have to avoid quaking, or anything that my character may be in danger of hitting. I can always see that while I'm healing everybody. Also, mine go vertically down. You can also have them go vertically down over here maybe, or some people have them go horizontally across the frame here. It's really up to you in terms of where you want them to be and what's more comfortable for you. But like I said, I like mine on the left-hand side so that I can always see myself, and I can always see if I'm in danger of anything. You may also notice that my party frame does look different than the default one. That's because I'm using an add-on called Vuhdo. Vuhdo is a party frame / raid frame add-on, and it's really powerful, specifically designed for healers. This is really, I would say, an advanced add-on. So if you're just starting out, maybe doing +5 dungeons, maybe around +10, it's really not something that you need to do keys with or high keys. There are a lot of people that don't use any add-ons for their party frames, and they get to really high keys as well. So this is by no means required. It's not something that you have to climb, but it's definitely something that will help you if you like to see or hide certain buffs. So the one powerful thing about Vuhdo is you can choose which buffs and debuffs you want to see on the given frame at any given moment. So for me, because I'm a shaman, I like to have my buff shown on the screen. So for me, like if I Riptide myself, you'll see how it shows on the bottom right hand side the icon that I have the Riptide heal over time effect on me. Another good thing about Vuhdo is, as we see, I have 9 seconds left. When it gets to a certain countdown, it'll show when it's about to expire, and then the number will change and it'll become redder and redder until it goes away. You also see here that my Earth Living weapon is procced, and that is shown on the top left-hand side. Again, this is all configurable in terms of which section you want this to be shown on and where on the frame you want. I have my debuffs on the bottom left-hand side. Now, the one thing to keep in mind about the debuffs with Vuhdo is it only shows the debuffs that you specifically want it to show. So unlike the Blizzard default raid frames, you have to put in what specific debuffs you want to see. Now, in some situations, that could be really helpful so that you have total control over what you see and not see, and it keeps the frames really clean, and it'll only show, an important bleed or an important debuff that has to be cleansed, right away. But the downside of that is you have to spend time and set it up and put in every debuff as you go through the dungeons. If you see a bleed or something that you really want to keep track of, you have to add that manually in the options for Vuhdo. Another downside of Vuhdo is, if I show you here, is that Vuhdo, the UI is very old. So we'll see here, this is what the Vuhdo UI looks like. It is very old, and it's not that bad once you get into it, but like I said before, this is more of an advanced add-on. If you're just starting out doing Mythic Plus, I would not recommend using this. This is for someone who's pushing 15 plus that really wants to get a more granular detail in terms of their party frames. But like I said before, with the debuffs, inside of Vuhdo, you go to debuffs, custom, and then this is where you can pick all the debuffs that you want to show on your party frame. So like for me, a lot of these, you can see here, some of these come with Vuhdo already, and then I added a bunch as I went through the dungeons. And like I said, the ones that aren't in that list will not show up here. Another good thing about Vuhdo is, let me go back into settings, is you can pick, like I mentioned before, under panels, hot icons, you could put which spell you want to in which section. So you'll see here, my Earth Shield is in slot 2, which is why Earth Shield's in the top right. So if I Earth Shield myself, you'll see Earth Shield shows up in the top right hand side. You could put those in any section you want here. This is just the way that I have it set up. And again, it is very configurable. I'll link down below a couple other add-ons that are close to Vuhdo. Some that are more powerful in some sense, less powerful in other sense, maybe a little bit more easy to set up. I'll link those down below. But for me, I think this one really is designed for healers, and it's a very powerful healing add-on. Also because you can do stuff where you can actually bind the mouse click. So a lot of times, if I wanted to cast Riptide, instead of actually hitting the action bar keybind, I could just left click or right click on the party frame. So by just typing in the name. So I can go into here and just do Riptide. And now if I left click this, you'll see that I just cast Riptide on myself. So a lot of people will use the clicking options for Riptide and Earth Shield and stuff. I don't really use that that often. I have macros set up for that, but this is really a big reason why a lot of people use Vuhdo, is so that they can bind their most common spells on the mouse without any knowledge of macros at all. And it's really powerful. It has the mouse over, like I said, comes preloaded, so you just put the spell in here and then you just left click and it'll automatically cast Riptide on your mouse over target. Really powerful, really great for healing. Another thing is you can go to colors down here, and because I'm a shaman, I can dispel curses and magic. So for me, whenever someone in my party gets a curse or a magic debuff, this background color will change to that red color, just so I know, okay, this person has a debuff that I can cleanse, and I can quickly, cleanse them if it needs to be cleansed. There's a lot of other options in here. Like I said, there's profiles. You could pick when to activate certain profiles based on the party or raid size. Again, I'm not going to go through the in-depth guide here. If there are additional questions on Vuhdo, ask those down below in the comments, and then I can always make a separate video on Vuhdo that's more in-depth, and maybe I could share some of my profiles or share some of the setup that I have here. So the next area that I want to go through is on my action bars. So one thing that you guys will notice is I don't have any of my action bars showing. I don't like having action bars shown all over my screen. If that's something that works for you and you like to have action bars shown, then that's fine. But for me personally, I like to have everything hidden by default and have the most screen real estate that I can for mobs and things happening in the middle of the screen. So the way that I hide all my action bars is with an add-on called Bartender. Bartender is an add-on that allows you to move your action bars, but also show or hide the ones that you want and don't want. So for me, what I did is I go into Bartender options and I find the action bar that I want, and then in visibility, you check the fade out option. So if I uncheck it, you'll see that now this action bar shows up here. And if I click this and set the fade out to 0 and fade out to 0, what that means is it'll be hidden, but when I hover down here, it'll come back. So all my action bars are down here. They're just hidden by default unless I hover over them. And this is great because when I'm healing, when I'm in combat, I have all this screen real estate to see, but if for some reason I need to see a keybind or I need to make sure that a spell is on my bars for some reason, I can always scroll down here, hover over the bars, and see which spells that I have active. Now the question that I get asked is, well, if you don't see any of your action bars, then how do you know when your spells are off cooldown or the wrong cooldown? Or if you can't see that, then how do you know? Well, that's going to lead into the next topic, which is going to be on my next add-on called WeakAura, which is this section here. So WeakAura is an incredibly powerful add-on in that it allows you to custom make things to track almost anything in the game. you could have bars across your screen tracking buffs and duration of things and cooldowns and debuffs. And what I did was is I made, you'll see this whole side section here is a combination of WeakAuras. So what you do is you download the WeakAuras app, and then what it allows you to do is either custom make your own stuff, or you can go online and import ones from the community that have made them. So what I would do as a shaman player is one of the, as an example, like a public one is if you go into the WeakAura options in game, what you can do is you can click import and then import strings of WeakAuras from the public. So one of the public ones is I have Earth Living Weapon. So Earth Living Weapon is a WeakAura that tracks whether I have it on my weapon or not. So for me, like I have it on, so you don't see anything. But if I were to take it off, or if it runs out, you'll see it gives me a reminder like, hey, you don't have this buff on your weapon. So there's something small, but it allows you to just make sure that you have a certain buff or track things. With that same WeakAura options panel here, I got another add-on made by Luxtos, who's very popular. He makes add-ons, he makes WeakAuras for all classes. But let me show you what his looks like. So this is very popular. If you're maybe a new player that wants to get into WeakAuras and also wants to hide their action bars, this is a great first step. You can download WeakAuras, and then you can get his WeakAura. I'll provide his link to his add-on in the description below. It is very powerful. It's very well made, and it allows you to track all of your spell cooldowns and mana and health and cast bars and everything in this one little area here. It also will track the healing rain. So you'll see here it shows the bar here of the duration of healing rain. So this is a way where you could see all of your cooldowns without having to actually have your action bars shown down here. The problem that I found is the placement of this was a little too far for me. For me personally, I like to have my spell tracking right next to my party frames because that's where I'm looking the most. So I took some of his and I made my own, and I made some changes to it, and I made my own little bar up here. So for me, as I'm healing, I can see when things are coming off cooldown, how long things are up for, very close to my party frame. So I'll add his link here. If you want to get more into how to make WeakAuras, there's a lot of guides online on how to create WeakAuras, how to track certain things. It is, like I said, extremely powerful. Another good thing is you can go online and look up a Dragonflight dungeon WeakAura. So what I have is I imported this one, which is an add-on that shows things happening in Mythic Plus. So this is just for season 1 of Dragonflight, but it shows like if there's a beam coming by nearby. It shows if we have to spread. It shows if there's an AoE happening in a certain amount of time. So it'll just show you a big icon to kind of remind you to do stuff in dungeons. Again, it's not required. It's not a huge deal, but it just adds a little bit extra there. And I have some other ones too. If my durability is less than 50%, it'll blink and have this up top here just to let me know to repair my gear. You can custom make a lot of these. It can track a lot of stuff about your character. So I definitely recommend getting WeakAuras and playing around with the settings and try to make your own. Again, if you don't really want to get into that, you can always just get the WeakAura add-on and then import one that's already pre-made. Very powerful. This tracks cooldown, it tracks buffs, it tracks a lot of stuff on here. You can always just get this, and then you don't really need anything else. So this is WeakAuras. This is, again, very powerful, and it's very helpful in high Mythic Plus keys. The next add-on that I want to talk about is called Plater. Plater is a nameplate add-on, and it's an add-on that is, again, extremely powerful. I'm not sure if I would necessarily recommend this to the majority of WoW players. Even myself, I think that I may change this out for another add-on because Plater is extremely powerful, but it is very complicated to set up, and it has so many customization options that unless you really care about specific nameplate settings for specific mobs in each dungeon, I don't think that there's going to be much value in using Plater, but I did want to bring it up just in case people were asking about how I get my plates to look like this. So you can see that mine are much thicker than default. I started out with thinner nameplates because I think that the thinner nameplates look a little bit better and a little bit nicer. But what I found is when you're actually in a dungeon and there's a lot of mobs nearby and there's a lot of casts going off and you as a shaman have to kick, it's better to see clearly which mobs are casting what and how much health the mobs have. So for me, I made them a little bigger so they're very clear in terms of who's casting and the health of everybody. Again, this is the Plater options in game. You can get pretty in depth in terms of specifically for enemy NPC, enemy player, friendly NPC, friendly player. You can have specific mobs change different colors. You could have specific casts different colors. You can also have specific casts flash or glow if they're important casts. There's scripts and mods to change some of the names and the casting, and it's very complex in terms of what you can do with this. Again, not something that's super required. In the description below, I'm going to provide some additional nameplate add-ons that are a little bit simpler to set up and I might actually change to. But again, like I said, just in case someone was asking about it, that I use Plater currently. I think it is important to have a nameplate add-on for Mythic Plus, just because as you start to get to higher keys, kicking certain casts become very important. So you have to be able to see, if you pull 10 or 15 mobs, you have to be able to see which mob is casting a certain spell. Because if you can't see it and you miss the kick, it could just one-shot you in higher keys. So I definitely recommend getting a nameplate add-on. Again, I'm going to provide some other ones in the description below, just so you could see casts and you could see what's going on. But I currently use Plater, and I'll include the link to Plater down below if you want to get Plater and play around with it and use it. So the next add-on that I'm going to talk about is called OmniCD. And this is probably one of the most important add-ons as a healer that you need to get if you're healing Mythic Plus. And it shows you the cooldowns of important spells from party members. So you can't see it now because I am outside, I'm not in a group. But if I open up the options for OmniCD and I go to Dungeon, I'll just show you a test. This is what it looks like. So I'm sure most of you have seen in my videos, when you're in a party of people here, it'll show a bunch of their cooldowns on the left-hand side of their frame. You could have it shown below on the right-hand side based on how your frames are set up. But for me, because mine are vertical over here, I have them going left. And you can pick and choose exactly what spells you want, which is why this is extremely powerful. So if you go into the settings again, go to Dungeons, you can go to Spells, and then for each class, you can pick what you want to track. So for Shaman, you'll see here, these are what I have tracked. Most of the time, for me personally, I use a lot of defensive abilities. I think for me, it's important to see if a Pally has Bubble available, or if a Rogue has Vanish available, or Cloak of Shadows available. That way I know if I should heal them or if I need to cleanse them. You also could track offensive abilities. If you want to track a Hunter Bestial Wrath, or you could track True Shot, or any of the stuff here, you could see when their offensive abilities are off cooldown as well. But for me, at least, as a baseline, you should track defensive abilities, because in higher keys, you'll have to see when things are off cooldown in order to know when you need to heal them or cleanse them. Another good thing about OmniCD is it shows down here the interrupts. So if I was in a party, it'll show all the interrupts for each person and whether they're off cooldown or not. So again, this is important just so you know how many interrupts are available for a spell that's being casted. So if you see your whole party's interrupts are off cooldown and you're the only one available, then you know, okay, now this may be a time when I need a kick. Or it's just something where you could see as you're going through the dungeon what's available. Again, it's very simple, this add-on. It doesn't require much setup or configuration. You just check the boxes on which spells you want to show or not, and it just works right out of the box. So this is something where I think every healer is almost required to have this. It's extremely powerful. It'll also show you when it's currently available or in use. So like for me, I just use Mastral Shift. You'll see that not only on my Vuhdo it shows, but also on OmniCD it shows that me as a shaman is currently active. So, and the cooldown, of course. So if my tank uses Shield Wall, say I have a warrior tank in my group, and I see he used Shield Wall, well then I know I don't need to pump a bunch of healing into him because he has his defensive active. Same with the rogue. If the rogue has Cloak of Shadows on, then I know that, okay, he's not taking any damage right now. If we're in a magical situation, I could heal somebody else. So this is something where it's incredibly important to see this. So this would be maybe my number one recommendation in terms of if you're a healer starting out with Mythic Plus, you really need to get this, and then learn your party members, their cooldowns, learn what's available, and this will help you do that. Very, very powerful in Mythic Plus. The last section that I'm going to talk about is just a couple add-ons together that are not going to really help you heal. They're not really required, I would say, but they're things that kind of help make up some quality of life changes or just stuff to make your life a little bit easier or some visual improvements. So one of the ones is called Shadowed Unit Frames, and this can actually be a Vuhdo replacement. It can be used to replace your raid frames and party frames and target frame and everything. But for me, like I said, I use Vuhdo. I think it's way more powerful. But what I do use Shadow Unit Frames for is to change the target. So if I target something, this right here, you'll see this, and on myself, this is Shadow Unit Frames. I think it doesn't really do anything different than the default ones, besides the fact that it allows you to customize what it looks like, how big or small it is, and where to put. This is the target of target on. So this is one of those things where, again, I think it looks a bit nicer than the default one. I don't like having the default one with the image and the animation in there. Again, it's just preference. If you like the default one, you could always use that. But this one's called Shadow Unit Frames. Another add-on that I use that actually I would recommend to everybody. It's not super important to healing, but it's called OPI. And what it does is it allows you to bind additional actions to a wheel that comes up in the middle of the screen. So this is OPI. So going back to the previous of not having action bars, in the past what I would notice is that I would have a lot of action bars for like mounts and hearthstones and some potions or toys or stuff like that, and it was just cluttering up my UI. So what I do now is, again, I don't have any action bars set up. So what OPI lets you do is you combine keybinds. So for me, it's Alt F or Alt and G. And what you do is when I hit Alt and F, I have this wheel that comes up of mounts. So if I want to use a mount, I just hit Alt F and then I just click on like my repair mount, and now I have my repair mount. Or I can go to the Mythic Plus mount for this season, and I have this mount. So it allows me to set up a lot of different rings here for different things. I also have one for group things, like my Lust is here. I have my single res, my group res, water walking here. I have one for professions, alchemy and herbalism and cooking. So again, it's not super required. It's not going to help you heal any better, but it's something that's really nice. It's really nice to have this to kind of clear up the action bars. And you can make rings for almost anything, from macros, mounts, spells, toys, different abilities. It's really powerful and it's really kind of fun to use. So that's another good one. I'll have that link in the description below. My other one that I use a lot, I think it's really good to have, is called Addy bags. So that's what my bags look like. it keeps the single bag theme, which is what Blizzard just implemented in Dragonflight, but this is a good job at grouping them automatically. So you actually can make your own groups if you want, but what I do is there's a lot of plugins for this. So this add-on is called Addy Bags, but there's also plugins for it for Dragonflight, for Professions, for Mythic Plus keys, like you see here. And if you add these plugins, it'll automatically will add sections for Professions and Mythic Plus keystones and all these things, and it just groups everything together for me without having to do any additional effort. So for me, whenever I get a potion or rep items, herbs, all these things just go into a nice section for me automatically. All my gear is in here, so I don't have to worry about having a big mess of bags. I highly recommend using Addy Bags. Again, I'll put the description down below so you can get this, as well as some of the plugins that I use for it. Really simple, really nice, and you can track some currencies down here as well if you'd like. Another one is Details, which it's a damage, healing, tracking add-on. You could use it to track certain types of healing. You can use it to track certain types of damage. You also can use it to track deaths and buff uptime and how many kicks people were doing in dungeons. It is very powerful. It's not going to help you really with healing per se, but you can see how much healing you're doing. You can see what your top healing is, and it is good to see if you want to try out like a new talent or something. You can kind of see how much healing that talent's adding to your healing, or how much you're losing, and you can track. For me, I have a death log here. I have healing done, damage done. But again, it's up to you to configure what winners you want to see and what you want to track. And then the last one that I want to talk about quickly is big wigs and little wigs. So I'm sure most of you have heard of probably DBM, but if you haven't, it's just an add-on to track for raids and for Mythic Plus boss mechanics. So I have big wigs and little wigs. So this is big wigs, and then little wigs is like a plugin for it, pretty much. So what it allows you to do is, like, for dungeon bosses on the Dragonflight, you can go to all the dungeons here. So let's do, say it would be life pools. And then for each boss, it shows you the mechanics. And then you could choose whether if you want to show it or hide like an alert for it. You could have it actually say and like announce certain things for it. This is very powerful. Again, I think this is one of those things where you can just install and just forget about it. Or if you really want to get more involved with it, you can turn some stuff off or show some things. It'll track down here. It'll track whenever the cooldown of boss mechanics, to let you know a list of when certain things are going to happen. It's really important. It'll emphasize big messages. It'll show countdowns of things, of cooldowns and stuff. So this is important to have, I think. You probably can get away with just using the WeakAura that I mentioned earlier in the video, but again, this is one of those add-ons where you can just download it, kind of forget about it, and it'll provide a lot of value to you as you're getting into higher Mythic Plus keys. So I'll provide that in the description down below. I don't have anything else to discuss in this video. If you have any questions about the add-ons that I mentioned, or if you would like any more in-depth guides on certain add-ons or how I set stuff up, ask down below. I may do a more in-depth guide on certain add-ons if there's interest in that. And again, if you like this video or want more of this type of content, like and subscribe, and I'll try to make more of these.